Welcome to Recross the Paths, where we celebrate the Cube community one conversation at a time. Today's conversation is with Trae. Trae, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you, Cade. I am excited to be here and talk about my cube today.
Just one cube, of course, but you've done several that are all very cool to me.
Yes. So the one we're talking about today is Spirit Guide, but I have infamously made Sandman, which was a part of the main event at CubeCon in Madison last year. It did kind of get banned from the main event after the first 2 days because games kept going to time. So I'm here to fix that reputation if I can get back into the main event this year with Spirit Guide.
There you go. It's funny that people often compete for things like the trophy pins, but you have the unique distinction of being banned from the main event.
Yeah.
But no, in fairness, the cube has a really unique hook, right? So tell us about Sandman.
Yes. So Sandman was unique in that it didn't have creatures in it. It only used lands that can turn into creatures. And so by its very nature, it forced everybody into a draw-go kind of control deck. And I mean, when it's all just control mirrors, it ends up going to time, especially when people are not used to playing that kind of deck.
Yes. Well, that's such a novel hook, and certainly stays in theme with where we're going with Spirit Guide, of course.
Yes, because Spirit Guide is also technically a desert cube, but it's landless entirely. There are no lands to be found in the entire box.
Almost the opposite, as it were.
It is. When I pitched this cube to my friends who hadn't seen the format Spirit Guide before, their first question was, what is this, the opposite of Sandman? And I was like, I didn't think of it that way, but you're definitely right.
See, this just shows that you are a person of range, of many talents. Well, Trae, before we dive too deep into the Cube projects, I like to ask, just to set the stage, why Cube?
Why Cube? So I started playing Magic around 10 years ago when I started high school. I had no money for the first 5 years, and I never spent a dime into the game for a while, actually. I was happy borrowing decks and usually playing Commander. Sometimes I got to build simple little standard decks with some cards that my parents would buy me for my birthday. But when I first learned of Magic, I was immediately obsessed. I tried to learn about every format and card and just everything that I could do with the game. It's such a unique game compared to everything else, and I quickly found out that Cube was and still is the best way to play. Draft is just this perfect amalgamation of putting everybody on the same playing field and testing Magic fundamentals like gameplay and deck building. And, well, I think Cube is better than traditional Draft because it's free to do so again and again, and it's usually more balanced in my opinion.
It sounds like you came into Cube pretty early in your journey.
Yes and no. I knew of it, but I didn't have anyone around me that played it or had a cube, so I kind of just experienced it tangentially through YouTube videos, and sometimes I could draft it a little bit online. But eventually I moved to where I am now, and we have a regular cube group that meets up every single week. And that's where I really got into it, when I could finally make cubes in paper.
So did you have a predilection for kind of off-the-wall stuff, you know, in your early times playing the game, or did that develop?
Yeah, I've always kind of done off-the-wall things. My first Commander deck that I ever built was Virtus the Veiled, because I just thought that was such a funny effect and makes people's eyes bulge out because they're like, what do you mean I've already lost half of my health? It's turn 3.
Yeah. Battlebond has a way of doing that to you. And I don't mean to say that as strange, but certainly in the pursuit of novelty, I know cube designers are often looking for, how can I do something different?
So I think I would be best described as a Johnny for my deck building and cube making experience. I want to do something that makes people do a double take and asking, what did you just say to me?
That is the Johnny Jenny, right? It's I want to do this off-the-wall thing, this peculiar thing that may work 1 out of 10 times, but that one time is going to make it worth it.
Yeah.
I love it. So in the process of learning and exploring and doing your own deck building, when did you set about designing your own?
I don't really remember when I started making a cube. I think I've just built so many different decks and so many cubes over the years that where I started is just hard to quantify, because it's always been in my nature to craft, and I think I have built more decks than I have played games of Magic, in fact. And cube is only
Sweet.
barely eking those numbers out, because you kind of have to build a deck for about as many games as you play.
Yeah, and if you're fortunate to get to play cube often enough to to outweigh your theory crafting, you're in a good spot. So with Spirit Guide, the one we're engaged with today, where does that fall on the timeline for you?
So initially, the Spirit Guide Cube started out as a constructed format. We were going through the pandemic in 2020, and we were kind of bored. We were a little frustrated with the mechanics in Magic's mana system. So we kind of just hopped on those online platforms where you can play Magic and created our own goofy format out of some inspiration of a bunch of other games like Ascension and Dominion, and really just went hog wild with a lot of variations. At some point, a friend of mine said that the easiest way to get somebody into a new format would be to make a cube of it, and I was just like, you're so right. And so then I made a cube about 1 year ago. I started making it in paper after the last CubeCon in Madison, after my questionable success of Sandman. And when I got to bring it to Shoebox, I was super proud that I got more playtesters than just my local play group, and I immediately saw a bunch of things that I could spruce up.
So Trae, give us the elevator pitch, the overview for Spirit Guide.
So Spirit Guide is a landless cube where every card acts like Simeon's Spirit Guide, allowing you to exile them for 1 mana of its color, and you draw 7 cards a turn, allowing you to slam 6 drops every turn, but so too can your opponent. It's incredibly fast-paced and highly interactive. You get to see your whole deck every game, and at first it feels like rock, paper, scissors, but by game 3 it feels more like chess, because you know every card in your opponent's deck, and you know how to counter them.
So it's like, because of the card velocity, you will have pretty literally seen every card your opponent can produce. That's pretty amazing. There's so much to unpack with this idea. I think first worth mentioning again, there are no lands. Like, you're not using the mana system traditionally.
Yes, there's no lands in the cube, and there's no lands you can add to the box whatsoever.
So you mentioned this was kind of a product of, I hate to say boredom, I guess, but like the explorations back in the pandemic. But like, how did you get to this, like to this emblem, to this idea?
So the exact iteration that we got to took a lot of trial and error. Originally, our rule was if you have less than 7 cards in hand, you draw cards equal to the difference. It was simple, but it was weirdly punishing in ways that you don't expect. At first it looked fine. You notice that 5 drops become kind of useless. There's no reason to keep that 1 extra card in hand, and you could have just played a 6 drop instead, but even then 4 drops felt super bad, because now you're left with exactly 2 cards in hand, and if you don't play a 1 drop right now, your opponent knows you're holding something up, like a lightning bolt or a giant growth, and even when that's the case, you better hope that both of those cards are the same color and that your opponent just doesn't do the very easy thing of like not playing something during their turn and waiting until your turn when you've already drawn and wasted that mana. And it ended up starting to force people into including more flash creatures in every deck, which is not something like a format should be encouraging necessarily. But yeah, something else you don't consider right away is the first player advantage, or rather second player advantage, because when you draw up to 7 cards instead of just an additional 7, the player going second can respond on their turn 0 or the player 1's first turn.
Because they're all Spirit Guides.
Yeah.
Of course.
And then the player 2 gets to immediately redraw, having just likely negated everything that you you did, and gets to play their own cheap threat and probably keep up another piece of interaction. And it turned out most games, player 2 was getting a turn 0 time walk with that rule. So we ended up changing it to drawing 7 additional cards each turn. It removed a lot of headaches. It allowed you to bluff cards and smooth out a lot of those rougher edges, like being able to keep a card in between turns without choosing to lose potential mana.
Were you drawing inspiration from, I know you mentioned like Ascension or Dominion or other games like that?
Yeah.
Was that something you were thinking through?
Yes, absolutely. Games like Ascension are some of my favorites. I love being able to just draw a handful of cards every turn and doing almost nothing with them. You just lay them all out for your opponent to see, and you're just like, that one. I'm gonna cast that one.
I mean, drawing cards is a fun game action, to be sure.
It absolutely is. There is nothing greater than just that feeling of having to take a mulligan, but doing so every single turn. You just grip 7 cards.
Trae, as you put this cube together, do you feel like it came about from like a flash of inspiration, or do you think it came about more as a product of iteration?
Yeah, so I would say it came from both. So every one of my projects have this spark of inspiration that I start with, and it leads into either weeks or years of iteration. They always start out as those funny little what if ideas. What if I could play Magic like Ascension? And the only ones that I think are worth pursuing are the ones that are super unique. But I can't commit to every idea that I ever have, so
Sure.
the only ones that I end up pursuing are the ones that I can iterate on time and time again. I love solving the problems, I love seeing its potential and where it can go, and at some point I end up actually finishing a project.
Well, I kind of wondered with a project like this where, like we mentioned, it has a pretty novel hook. The gameplay is not what people expect from traditional Magic, though it has a lot of the same echoes. It just strikes me as the sort of thing that, maybe, you bolt up right in the middle of the night with the idea in your head fully formed. But it sounds like, there's a lot more theory crafting before this found its legs.
Yes, the initial theory crafting was, as a game designer, I love to make board games and card games, and I've been trying to make my own trading card game for basically as many years as I've known about Magic the Gathering in the entire space of trading card games. But every single time I create a new idea and I follow through it and I make some cards for it, the thought creeps into the back of my head is, I really could just take these rules and apply them to Magic cards, and then I have the entire system already figured out.
And you have the shared design language with everybody who would play it with you to help test.
Yep.
And so this cube is built on 2 separate emblems in a way, right? You have the one that you just described about refilling your hand every turn, and then you have the one that suggests that you can use a card like Simian Spirit Guide. Or I guess Elvish Spirit Guide if you're an old head like me.
Yes. So both of those emblems end up creating this field where you can play 6 drops every single turn, or end up combining it together and being like, here's my 2 and 3 drop, because that ends up adding to 7 altogether. And without either one of them, it would be a completely different cube. And I mean, even if you had just one of them, I think that would still make for a fine cube. In fact, the first time I played this at Shoebox, I already had a guy who was very inspired by just the Spirit Guide emblem, that he was wanting to make a cube of his own, which would end up including lands, and without the card draw one. And that already makes me feel like a proud father in a way, where my project has gone forth and mutated into someone else's idea. And if they do bring that cube somewhere that I may see it one day, that will be a very proud moment.
So does Spirit Guide still feel like regular Magic when it's played?
Yes and no. I do like to brag about how the cube feels like a different game entirely. Truly, it does. You have no lands, and you have no sense of things getting more powerful over the course of the game, but at the end of the day, you're still attacking and blocking with creatures, and you're still casting and countering spells, and I did intentionally choose cards that are familiar to the average Commander and Cube player, and in my opinion, it honestly feels more like Magic to me than a lot of other formats. You really get to see what the power of a card is and what dies to removal means. There's just so much back and forth gameplay, and no one is ever truly left behind. Anyone can come back from anything, and you've never lost the game until your life total reaches 0.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, drawing 7 cards a turn probably does make it feel like, hey, you're never really down for the count.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Like, there's just that concept of, boy, I hope I draw what I need. Like, yeah, great, you have 7 chances.
This is why I love including cards like Angel's Grace in here, because that is the apex of just got 'em moments. You can't... A 1 mana, basically a fog, you can't lose the game this turn, and you can just come back from that 1 life total, and that 1 extra turn may be all that you need to win the game.
That's right. 1 isn't 0. So, like thinking about the card draw with that emblem, how does having card velocity like that change the texture of games?
So the card velocity is the main reason this cube feels so different than traditional Magic. In Spirit Guide, every card is expected to be in your hand for about 10 seconds, and if you get it in play, you'll be lucky if it sticks around for half as long. But it's honestly the part of Magic that I love the most, because the ability to interact and adapt to almost anything is just amazing to me, because every game has this natural ebb and flow. In Spirit Guide especially, everything gets interacted with, and then you play a new thing, and then you interact with it, and then your opponent does the same thing. And when I first built the cube, this was actually kind of a problem, because everything was too balanced and would often lead to stalemates lasting an hour or something like that, because you just keep doing the same thing turn after turn, which is why I've now included a bunch of win now buttons, is what I'm calling them. Because a lot of the time you play that threat, it eats a Doomblade or a counterspell, and sometimes you really just need like a distortion strike. Make that creature unblockable, finish the game, go on to the next one. Or the cards that I really like are Deflecting Palm and Dazzling Reflection, where you can redirect that damage back to its controller and, catch your opponent slacking, is what I like to think of it as. Slip in that unexpected win.
You've never truly died until you've been deflecting palmed.
Yes.
So with drawing that many cards, the first thing people will probably wonder is, how do you not deck out?
Yes, that is a bit of a problem that Spirit Guide does solve in a little bit of a clunky way. I honestly wish I could delete the deck recycling rule. It's complicated, it's easy to forget. But the rule is that when your deck runs out, instead of losing the game, you shuffle back in all of the cards that have been used to exile for mana. And the way that this is tracked is that it's officially all tucked under the emblem. The emblem says when you exile this card, for as long as it stays exiled, it will get shuffled back into your deck once it's empty. Because if you draw 7 cards a turn, by turn 6 you'll have drawn 42 cards, which is more than your 40 card deck limit, and then you can't have a game that's longer than 5 turns.
Blue players salivating everywhere here. So much card draw. But then this also sounds like it borrows from some of these other board games or card games where, before you would draw up or before you need to draw, those things just get shuffled in and then rebuild.
Yes. Like Ascension and Dominion, that's exactly where that rule comes from.
So then the other cards, though, those are just in their regular game zones, right?
Yep.
So like things that get destroyed in combat or... yeah.
If a card gets like Swords to Plowshares, that ends up in exile, but it doesn't end up getting shuffled back into the deck because it's a non-tracked exiled card. And so the permanency of everything is still tracked. You can still get milled out if you run out of cards to play.
So there is a measure of the diminishing returns. It's not just full recursion through the deck over and over again. You actually do have to make decisions about what you use.
I do love the card diminishing returns too. That's a great example of what this cube feels like as a card.
Did you latch onto that right away, or did you try other things first?
No, the deck reshuffling rule has been there from the very beginning. We could never find a cleaner way to do it. The iterations that we've done on it are simply making it mechanically coherent. We say that if you were to look at or reveal a number of cards like the Anticipate or the more modern day like stock up, if you look at 5 cards but there's only 4 cards left in your deck, you get to look at those first 4 cards, shuffle what your mana pile is, and then add one more card to that pile, and then finish resolving the spell.
There's so much to chew on with that. Like, even as we're talking about it, like I researched this before, kind of thinking through, but it's a lot to kind of conceptualize.
Yeah, it's a lot to conceptualize, but once you play it in paper, you realize that it's way more simple than it ever sounds like on paper, so to speak.
So Trae, how do you go about choosing cards for this cube, since they can all be used in multiple ways?
Yeah, so I really love this question because the truth is that there's no outside force influencing what the power level should be. Spirit Guide is a set of rules, not a set of cards. When Spirit Guide first started as a constructed format, though, my original playgroup were a bunch of Commander players who built pre-con level decks. We took that same mentality into Spirit Guide, where we played cards we were familiar with, cards that are powerful and gain value turn after turn, rather than just hunting down the most broken combos and turn 1 wins. And with all that playtesting we did, I ended up finding a bunch of my favorite cards for a format like this, like Atali Primal Storm and Chandra Awakened Inferno are just so funny when you can play them on turn 1.
I mean, fun for one person.
Yeah. I love being able to just drop a cool Planeswalker or flashy Mythic that got way more hype than it ever saw actual play. For example, I love Questing Beast. It's just so funny to me as a card because everyone thought that was going to like break multiple formats, but now it's this $2 card, and I don't know the last time I've seen someone cast it outside of this cube.
It is a trivia question mostly. It's can you remember all the all the things of it?
That's why I have Questing Cosplayer in the cube, because it's just as funny to me to have that be a little bit of a memory test. But I have a little paper token in there that people can grab out.
That's so funny. So you mentioning coming from your Commander experience and your friend's Commander experience, can you exceed 7 mana for anything? Basically, would you be able to play cards that are that expensive? Is there a way to break the limit there?
Yes, you can absolutely play cards that cost more than 6 or 7 mana, because your maximum hand size is 7, and you only discard at the end of your turn. So if you have a full grip of cards on turn 1, you could wait till turn 2, draw 7 more, and now you have 14. You could nearly cast Emrakul that way. Luckily you can't, because that would be really scary, honestly. But you can absolutely cast that 8-drop or 9-drop. But most of the time, you're still better just casting like 2 6-drops than like an ultimatum.
That's really amazing. And what a funny turn of phrase. Like, you're better off casting 2 6-drops. It's just such a wild thing. One of the things you mentioned in your overview also is how tricky colored mana is to work with that way, right?
Yes.
So not only are you talking about managing card velocity and how much you're spending, but also making sure that you match the right colors to what you have to create.
Yes, that's what I love about color in this cube, is it's not I got each one of my basic lands in play, I never have to think about it again. You have to make sure your entire deck is constructed in a way where you have constant access to your colors. Because cards with 2 or more of the same color requirement, what we call pips or devotion, are harder to cast than players tend to expect, which is both a good and a bad thing. I love how well it balances cards, even the expensive ones, like Atali, for example. In regular Magic, the fact that Atali is 4 generic and 2 red, as opposed to 5 and 1, it hardly matters once you're at 6 mana. You're probably going to have 2 mountains or 2 dual-colored lands, depending on what format you're playing. But in this cube, in order to cast Atali, you have to have 2 other red cards in your hand at the same time, which means about 3 and 7 cards need to be red, which equates to about half of your deck needs to be red.
That's interesting. So it's like almost, I'm sure a math person will correct me that it's not an exponential change, but it is a much higher requirement for those to make sense if you're following the proper numbers.
Yeah. I love that it really enforces the concept of the color pie throughout your entire deck. I mean, you can't play Force of Will if you don't have a whole bunch of blue cards.
Right. Does that make things like gold cards just a higher pick since you can pitch them for anything?
Yes, but not by a ton, surprisingly. In Spirit Guide, multicolored cards are kind of like taking colorless cards in other cubes. They're easy to speculate on and never a bad choice, but they're also definitely not necessary. It's why I include a bunch of 3 and 5 color cards just for the sake of color fixing, but even when you're playing a 2-color deck, they're surprisingly useful. It's the exact same reason why Atraxa outclassed Grizzlebrand is the best reanimation target, just because it's 4 colors and can be pitched to, Force of Will, Grief, Endurance. Not that I have any of those cards in this cube, because that's a bit above the power level.
I'll push back on that only a little bit because I think Atraxa is cracked for many, many other reasons.
Yes.
but the point stands, right? Like that 4 colors does mean that it's useful in a variety of other ways.
Yes, but it also leads me to not including any signpost gold cards. Here in this cube, I've chosen to just dedicate gold cards to stuff like Vindicate and Despark, because usually you'll just pitch them for mana, but when you do cast them, they'll do what they need to do. Not that they're all removal, I still can't help myself from some of my favorite cards like Cosmogoyf and Sire of Insanity.
Oh, Cosmogoyf seems insane here.
Yes.
Those are all still in exile, right? As you burn through the deck.
Cosmogoyf is currently untested, I will say that. It was a recent addition someone suggested, but I'm willing to test it. If we get into the color pie thing, the difference between blue and green, I'll explain what you can do with that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for sure.
So, I am a huge advocate for the color pie. I love how it gives each color different strengths and weaknesses, and how that naturally creates tension with the mana system that rewards you for playing less colors. It's honestly phenomenal game design, which is why I choose to respect the color pie and not include cards like Beast Within that were never meant to be green, in all honesty.
So no Harmonize, no none of your color shifted stuff.
Well, Harmonize is like an okay card, but not in this cube because it would kind of just cycle.
That's true.
If you end up spending more mana on a card that draws less cards than it, it's almost never worth it.
That is interesting. I don't want to derail us too far there, but yeah, card draw seems really weird here too.
It's the reason blue does not work in its traditional fashion, because outside of specifically Ancestral Recall, it doesn't really work. And ironically, Ancestral Recall is not even that good. It's just like a dark ritual.
You heard it here first, folks. Trae says Ancestral Recall not even as good as Dark Ritual.
Because with the rules of Spirit Guide, every card you draw can be used for mana, and most of the time they are, so drawing cards is essentially ramping. Green is already the best color at ramp, but a card like Llanowar Elves is really awkward when it takes 3 turns to get the mana back that you spent on it, and is only technically ramp on the 4th turn, and it's probably dead on the first one, to be fair.
This is so brain-binny, Trae.
But green also has the best cards for incremental card draw, like Beast Whisperer and Soul of the Harvest, allowing you to draw a card or 2 every single time you play a creature. After a few turns, if you manage to get them to stick around, you're practically guaranteed to drown your opponent in card advantage, much like a traditional blue or black deck does. And green is also the best color for a single spell that can draw you a lot of cards, like Rishkar's Expertise or Return of the Wild Speaker, which gives you cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control, and it gives green a phenomenal impression of Ritual and Storm.
But it's all linked to creatures on board, like that have to stick around. And you suggest that interaction is pretty high, so that may not be as likely as you think.
Yeah, it's not very likely. If you cast that Rishkar's Expertise and someone Doomblades your 10/10 in response, kind of just wasted your turn, and they got a 2-for-1 in a way, with a huge mana advantage, because you probably spent 6 mana on both of those cards.
So then if blue doesn't get to be the slow value control color, what are you doing with it here?
Blue gets to be the big stompy color because blue never draws more cards than the amount of mana you spent on a card. It also struggles to have that repeatable kind of card draw that green has. But blue has a lot of synergy for drawing cards because normally that's a hard thing to do, but Spirit Guide automatically gives each player 7 cards a turn, so suddenly Chasm Sculler and Lore Scale Coatl are bigger than any green creature could dream of. These creatures gain a +1/+1 counter for every card you draw, so when they're ready to attack next turn, they were 3 mana 8/8s, and they only get bigger if they are not immediately dealt with.
I love that. You know, I see cards like Anirophage that I have in a different project where, you know, these small incremental gain a counter here, a counter there is what you're used to. But when, no, every turn, this is going to pick up 7 more counters.
Yep.
That's
and
amazing.
You still only have 20 life, so those things are very deadly.
So how fast do games turn out being if everybody's kind of slinging these giant spells back and forth?
Well, it really depends on the version of the cube, because back when it was super balanced, the version I brought to Shoebox, games ended up being closer to like 20 minutes to half an hour per game, so a whole round ended up being like an hour. But when we play this as a constructed format, and what I'm trying to get the cube to mirror as much as possible, those games were only 5 to 15 minutes, which is pretty standard for your like modern or legacy format.
So it kind of has come back down to, it sounds like closer to target at least as you're working with it.
Yeah, it's trying to aim towards quicker games so that you can play more games.
There was one other thing I wanted to ask with the color pie, because I know we talked a little bit about gold cards filling a unique role there. How possible or likely is it for people to splash, or do you mostly find folks in 2-color decks?
So 3 and 4 color decks are absolutely viable in this cube, but you have to be careful because splashing a color in the traditional sense where you only have a card or 2 of that color is basically impossible. At minimum, just like probability-wise, you need at least 5 cards of the same color to consider playing it, and that's only for cards with 1 pip in their cost, and that's only a success rate of about 1 in 5 of your turns being able to cast them, because in order to cast 1 red card, you'll need to draw another red card at the same time, which is honestly why I try to shove in a lot more color fixing from gold cards, because a lot of decks are going to end up as 3 colors, and you might not end up with 10 monocolored cards from each color.
And that math also gets more strange as you're casting spells, right? Because like once you use one of those spells, that color, you don't get it back as the deck recycles.
Which is also why I suggest people try to use their multicolored cards primarily for color fixing so that you can do so again once your deck recycles.
At the risk of saying it again, this is so brain bendy.
Yeah. Which is, I love being able to twist people's brains. I love being able to recontextualize cards because you see that cool 6-drop, and when you're used to drafting a bunch of other cubes, you're like, oh, obviously that 6-drop is not something I have to think about, but no, that's a high-value pick because you can play it on turn 1. Or a card like Bontu's Last Reckoning, which is a 3-mana damnation that says your lands don't untap next turn, which is just flavor text in this cube.
This is like the best that card has ever looked.
Yep. And it certainly saves me money because Damnation's like a $50 card or something, and Bontu's is like less than $1.
Perfect. This is what we like to see. This is, I think, a good segue into that. You have a very detailed overview, and you mentioned a number of common pitfalls that you try to warn people against. One of those is you recommend that people pick up a Wrath.
Yes, I always recommend players play some number of Wraths. I put the number as 1 in the overview, but in reality, I'm suggesting you're going to want like 3 or so, because it's just a numbers game at some point. Eventually, your opponent is going to get more creatures in play than you have removal spells. And so a Wrath, even a limited one like Baral's Expertise, which can bounce 3 different things, is going to be valuable because you either cast a Wrath or you just lose the game. And I always want games to have that sense of, oh, if only I top deck the right thing next turn, I could win this game.
If by top deck you mean if in the top
in the
7
top
cards.
7, yes.
That's amazing. So what are some of the other pitfalls you try to caution against here?
So the most common pitfall I see is decision paralysis. When I see new players open their first hand, it has 7 cards. Each one of them could be cast or exiled for mana, and some cards might be modal. And if you can cast 2 spells, if every card in your hand is 2 or 3 mana, that could be up to 42 possible permutations on just how you play your hand alone. And each card that you keep in your hand for next turn could be a card or a color that you have access to, and that's something you want to think about. And you don't know what your opponent is going to be playing and whether or not it's best to be proactive or reactive. And I ask players to just take a nice deep breath and ignore all of that. None of that matters for your very first turn, that is, especially if you don't want to go to time. I want players to think about it from a completely different angle. Chances are you will probably only be able to play 1 card a turn, and if that's true, it might as well be one of the 6 drops, which you probably only have like 1 or 2 of them in your hand right now, and you probably can't even cast one of them because it's a removal spell or you might not have the right colors. And so when you're looking down the decision barrel and you see, is it a Tully I cast right now or Spawning Kraken, I just ask which one is funnier.
I think that's a good way to think about it. So this is a very complicated environment. There's a lot of things that you can consider. How do you want players to try to strike the balance between like the seriousness of a game and the levity of like how wild this could be?
That's an excellent question, because in reality what I want is that the cube is super casual and stress-free, that you're just there to sling some spells and not think that hard about it. What I would prefer is that the cube is super casual and that the constructed format is super spiky, hopefully.
And the constructed format kind of echoes back to how you played some of this in the olden days, right? That This is just, you kind of get to pick out the most explosive or the optimal balance of things.
Yeah, because Spirit Guide actually started out as a constructed format, and it's not even that different from Cube, because for whatever reason we decided to give players a 40-card deck there as well. And we gave it the legacy ban list, which is to say all of the cards in the game that isn't like Black Lotus or something.
And I don't even know that Black Lotus would be that helpful here, right?
I mean, it would, because it's still like 3-in-1 card.
That's fair, yeah.
But I did still have to ban a bunch of cards. I banned archetypes of cards, actually. Like, the big ones are extra turn spells and wheels, because they will just always draw you more cards. And, like, all you have to do is wait for your opponent to not have anything, play just a random 1-drop or 3-drop, and then cast every extra turn spell in your deck, and you win the game.
That's amazing.
Unfortunately, and maybe ironically, that does mean that Recross the Paths is banned in the format.
Oh no.
For the very reason that I love the card Recross the Paths, which is that if you have no lands in your deck, you get to order your entire deck however you
That's
like.
right. That's right. That was a little inside baseball there, right? Like that was one of those. I didn't think about it so much when I picked the title for this program, and then I realized shortly after, like searching, you just get all the old combo decks that people are playing with the card, because you can do exactly what you described and order your entire deck.
Yep. But the constructed format is crazier than the cube, because we also don't limit you to singleton. You can have up to 3
yeah.
copies of a card, and when you have 3 of a card, it's actually 50-50 odds of it being in any given hand that you draw throughout the game. And if you have multiples of a card, like Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, you can quote-unquote do the thing you're trying to do, like, every single turn.
That's so wild. So it's like, as high octane as you may think this draft looks, just imagine if you got to curate the whole experience.
Yep.
Yeah, one of the restrictions that stuck out to me as I was reading here was you say in pretty explicit terms, do not attempt a companion.
Yes, I really want to warn players about the companions. Just don't. Just put them in the deck if you want to play the card, because changing your entire draft for the sake of one card is not going to go over well. Even if you accidentally follow the companion rule, it's still not worth putting it in there, because spending 3 extra mana on a card that's just as fragile and temporary as everything else is not worth it. And to be honest, chances are you're probably not going to be able to play that 3 mana bonus and the 5 mana companion in the same turn, and you're just going to end up time walking yourself.
And you've noted this a couple times in a couple different areas here, but it sounds like interaction is a pretty key part of this. So this isn't just my haymaker against your haymaker. It's a lot of spot removal. It's a lot of bounce, a lot of changes.
A lot of spot removal turns the game into a bit of a constant mana advantage equation, or you can also think of it as card advantage. It's pretty much the same thing in this cube. For every Doomblade cast on a 6-drop, you effectively gained 4 mana on your opponent, and that's true as well for just an unsummon effect, which can oftentimes be even more effective if you don't particularly really dislike whatever the ETB is of that creature.
So then, Trae, did you want interaction to be less expensive or more expensive to try to balance that?
Yeah, I generally want it to be less expensive. That's why I've got good old, like, Swords to Plowshares, Condemn, Lightning Bolt if you can get that to work on the lower toughness creatures, or your Go for the Throat sort of thing. That's where your advantage is going to be. And I also never want to discourage players from doing what I feel is the right thing, which is this natural ebb and flow that comes when you're playing a threat, removing a threat. You play a threat, your opponent removes it.
So Trae, where do you see Spirit Guide going next? You mentioned you had a lot of changes you're chewing on.
Yes, so the changes that I've made in the last couple of months since Shoebox has kind of turned the cube into the ship of Theseus, because no joke, it is 300 cards different than what it was in Shoebox, and it's only a 432 card cube, so a lot has changed, except for my pet cards, I guess. Those ones have stayed in, of course.
So then is it like, are there particular concepts, or is it mostly like a card by card, this could be better or different in this way?
Yeah, so better isn't usually what I'm looking for in this kind of cube. I like to make sure everything's on the same power level, but what I'm trying to aim for is that back and forth gameplay, but I'm also trying to reduce complexity as much as possible. Like, I've taken out every double-sided card, and I've taken out some cards I thought were really cool, but even I was having to do a double take on them. So, like, Trial of Agony and Mutiny, if you're familiar with either of those, are 1 red to basically have a burn spell, like make 2 of your opponent's creatures fight each other, but that's not like actually what it says. And Trial of Agony uses over 30 words to say, deal 5 damage to something the other can't block. And it's like, I can easily just cut those for anything else.
Well, it's something that people are going to resonate with right away.
Yes. That's why I have largely chosen to fill the cube with a bunch of commander staples that people are familiar with. That's where I get, Atali Primal Storm as the card that will most likely never leave the cube.
Yeah.
And it's so perfect in this cube, because I swear every time I play Atali Primal Storm in a normal format, it hits 3 lands and 1 spell every time.
But no, you're not going to hit any lands here.
No lands here. A cube dedicated to making Atali good.
Guys, we did it. We finally broke Atali. Are there principles or ideas from Spirit Guide that you carry into your other design projects?
Yes, absolutely. I have learned a lot about complexity creep, such as the Trial of Agony that I mentioned, or the double-sided cards, and I've strayed away from Universes Beyond because for some reason they just keep putting more and more words on all of those cards, and I've also learned things like how to make games end in a satisfying way that doesn't feel like you got punished for doing the wrong thing. And I've got so many different lessons on how to balance a cube, but I couldn't just quantify all of that easily. It's more intuitive than anything from building just so many cubes over the years.
So in that spirit, what advice would you want to share with other people as they're considering their own projects?
Yeah, so if you're a beginner, my advice is that you don't need any advice. If you haven't made a cube and you want to, there is truly nothing more valuable than seeing your cube drafted for the first time. Find those little moments that you like and encourage them. But that probably means making your cube lower power than you originally anticipate.
That's good. Well, Trae, this has been so much fun to explore. And to be honest, my head is still spinning just a little bit. There's a lot of things to chew on with this project, and I think it's delightful how much there is to explore still.
Yes, that is what I love, exploring all of the possibilities.
Well, before I let you go, I do get to ask you one of my favorite questions, Trae, which is, if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would you pick, and who would you have do the illustration?
That card would be Mobilization by Dominic Mayer. Are you familiar with both of those?
I am familiar with both of those.
So, Dominic Mayer is easily my favorite artist. I'm slowly putting together a cube of all of my favorite art, and honestly, part of it is just to show off all of Dominic Mayer's work. But Mobilization has a special place in my heart because it was part of the first deck I ever played. It was a mono-white kitchen table deck, and it opened my eyes to the depth and possibilities within the game. It was one card that could just keep spitting out an unlimited number of cards, and suddenly flooding with lands wasn't such a bad thing, and in one line of text, it did 2 amazing things where it was able to both keep track of all of these tokens and buff them with vigilance, and it was able to do so on other cards if you decided to build your deck around it. Because they could have just made the enchantment give the tokens vigilance innately without the enchantment doing it. But when I look back on it, it shows me the depth of even the flavor of it. Because if Mobilization gets destroyed, obviously that's pretty bad because you can't make more soldiers, but also all of them lose vigilance because the team's morale has disappeared.
That's so cool. And I mean, you mentioned that encouragement of maybe looking toward lower power environments. Like Mobilization is a linchpin of some of those mid to low power environments where you have the time to slowly flood the board with creatures.
If I had a promo of Mobilization, I would be forced to make a cube with it.
There you go. One, I have to also acknowledge Dominic Mayer's art is fantastic. This
so fantastic.
A lot of strong shape work, really like beautifully abstract in so many of the things he's put together.
And such vibrant colors in every one of his pieces. I don't know how he does it.
It's really fantastic. Great choice. Well, Trae, if folks want to learn more about this cube, perhaps stretch their brains out a little bit and try it out, or maybe even explore the constructed format on this, where should we point them?
Yeah, a great place to find me is on the Shoebox or Madison CubeCon Discord. You can message me and I'm more than happy to talk about Cube. I also have a dedicated Discord server where I host all of my other silly formats as well. My username on Discord is Trae, that's Trae, the guy with the vampire cat profile picture. Or you can also just search the words Spirit Guide on those Discords or on Cube Cobra.
Outstanding. Well, Trae, it has been a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your passion. This is such a cool project, and I'm so glad we got to talk about it.
Thank you for having me. I was very excited to be here.